Hello guys, this is Ty, aka the Flip Man. How to flip commercial buildings like houses. Your cash or credit won't matter. Everybody knows you can make money in real estate. You have residential and you have commercial real estate. Most people start out on the residential side of real estate and never gravitate to commercial. And there's a number of reasons why. This particular video, I want to show you whether you're watching it on YouTube, Facebook, partial on Instagram, or wherever you're viewing this video. I want to share with you an opportunity that you may not be aware of. Most people are not aware of this process. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Most people are trying to flip houses, whether they're doing retail flips or mainly what I'll be talking about here is wholesaling, where you don't use your cash or credit to do deals, but you still have an opportunity to make a significant amount of money in a very short time frame. But everybody's doing competition. We know everybody and their mama are trying to flip and wholesale houses. You know, there's information everywhere online about it. As I said, obviously you can have large paydays of or decent paydays of $5,000, $10,000, $25,000 on a wholesale deal. It even can be more. But depending on the market that you're in, you know, this is probably the range of what deals will normally be for you. Again, you can make a significant living and change your financial situation very quickly by doing this. But why not flip commercial buildings and start to add zeros to those amounts and make $50,000, $75,000, $100,000, even more on a wholesale deal? Not the same process, but the same process. Once you have a seller and a buyer in place, the process will work the same. It's just the numbers will change as far as the amount of money that you can make. So how is this actually done? Now understand that these numbers are bigger. Houses are easier to wholesale and to flip. But we're talking about, most people we're talking about, this is a year's salary, even at $50,000, $75,000, and definitely $100,000 is a year's salary for one deal. So how is this actually done? I'm just going to take you briefly through this. All right, number one, there's very little competition for a number of reasons. Most people are afraid to get into commercial real estate. Even investors that I know that have dwarfed what I've done, and I've done fairly well in residential, and they're terrified of getting into commercial. And for the most part, it's a lack of knowledge. Some of it is the amount of the properties. Normally, you're going to be dealing with 6, 7 plus figures. When you start talking about commercial real estate, the barrier entry for me for a long time was just even putting up the earnest money, even though I had it. I just couldn't come to grips with risking this type of money, knowing that I could lose it, until I figured out a way to avoid that. But again, most people, even if they have $5,000, $20,000, or $50,000 to put up as far as earnest money, they can't bring themselves to do it. Again, mainly because of the lack of knowledge of completing an actual deal. So what do you look for on this opportunity that I'm talking about here? Because commercial real estate is vast. When you start talking about hotels, multifamily, hardware, vacant large storage buildings, storage facilities, malls, retail shopping centers. It goes on and on. But the niche that I'm going to focus on that most people can relate to are vacant commercial buildings like this. This appears to be an old fast food restaurant that is now closed. That is opportunity. In a lot of cases, that is opportunity. And what you look for is you'll look for a building like this surrounded by all of these types of brands. All of these are national brands: Walgreens, Burger King, AutoZone, Walmart, Starbucks. You get the picture. And this particular building here to the left is standing out like a sore thumb. We've all seen it. You've seen it. You've passed buildings for months, sometimes even years, and it's vacant, and then one day you see new construction. Either they tear the entire building down and come back up with something new, or they renovate the building that's there, and boom, now you see, who knows, a Arby's there now. But we've all seen it. I don't care where you are, you have seen that process before. So how can you take advantage of an opportunity there? As I said, I'm going to go through briefly how to do this. All right, the first thing, obviously, is you're going to identify the vacant building, and then you're going to need to accumulate and get the demographics of the building. What I mean by demographics is income within 1 mile, 3 mile, and 5 mile radius, and also the population in the 1 mile, 3 mile, or 5 mile radius. The size of the building and the size of the lot, all of that's important, and I'll come back to that and tell you why in a second. The traffic count, meaning how many cars, vehicles pass that building on a daily basis, and the triple net comps per square foot. This will make a little more sense as I get into this video a little further. But basically, so you can normally get that information, if not from the building, if it's actually for sale, even if it's for lease, the broker that has the listing, or the owner, but in most cases, the actual commercial broker that has the listing already has that information for you. If they don't, there's normally going to be other buildings very close by that you can still gather that same information from another commercial broker. And then some of this stuff is just actually online on various websites. But once you gather that information and you know what you're dealing with, and it appears to be an opportunity there to make an offer, then that's when you'll actually make an actual offer on the property. And if your offer is accepted, then there's the due diligence, there's the earnest money deposit that most people are afraid of, which the way I do it, you can get around that very, very easily. And then the due diligence period, whereas the due diligence period is how you're going to get paid and how you will determine and add value to the property. So adding value to the property, what does that mean? Just for the sake of this video, we're going to say this building here, you can get it under contract for $500,000 with basically no money down as far as earnest money. Again, there's a way of doing that. But you get this building under contract. All right, so how will you add value to the property? All right, understanding commercial triple net leases. What triple net simply means is that the tenant, the potential tenant, whether it's the Burger King, the Arby's, or Walgreens, and all the brands you saw before earlier in the video, they're not only going to make the lease payment on the property, but they're also going to pay the taxes on the property, the insurance, and the maintenance. Those are the three nets that take care of the expenses for all buildings. And so you as the potential buyer of the building, the reason that this will be attractive to them is because there's no management. If the tenant is going to make the payment, the lease payment to you every month, they're also going to pay the insurance, they're going to pay the taxes, and they're going to take care of the maintenance. They call that mailbox money, or sit on your butt money. You don't have to do anything but collect a check or wait on a actual deposit into your account each month from a national tenant. All right, so what is a national tenant? As I showed you before, these are national tenants here. Walgreens, Burger King, AutoZone, Family Dollar, Starbucks, Walmart. We've all heard of those. Who hasn't heard of these brands? All of these brands turn into national tenants for the most case. Some of them will own the actual location, the property itself, but for the most part, they prefer to do triple net leases. They just want to lease the property so they can sell whatever product or service that they're offering. All right, now how you'll add value to the property is that you'll get a commitment from a national tenant such as these brands, as I mentioned before. You'll get an actual commitment from them long term. And what's long term? Normally 5 years, 10 years. Most of them start out with 15 years. Once that occurs, you've just added value to this property. All right. So going back to this example, we have the building under contract for $500,000. But once you get the national tenant to agree to a long-term triple net lease, the value of the building goes up. Just for the sake of argument, to make this easy, is once the tenant is committed, and it's all, as I said, it's all based on cap rate. I can't get into it because it's a little bit more complicated. You can just do a Google search on cap rate and triple net cap rates and do your own due diligence on that part of it. But now the value of the building as it sits with that commitment from a national retailer or national tenant, it could easily go from you having it under contract at $500,000, but it's worth to an investor, to a buyer, $800,000, just because of that long-term commitment. So why is that important from that national tenant? So what you have to understand is that whenever you get a commitment from a company of this type, in order for you not to get paid as an investor, the owner of the actual property, and why it's attractive to investors and that like triple net income, is that in order for them not to get paid, Walgreens would have to go out of business entirely, the whole company. Now, that location can have bad sales and say 10 years into the lease, on a 15-year lease, got 5 years left. They say, hey, this is not working out. It's not worth us having employees there and expenses such that we're going to close this location. Guess what? They still have to pay that other 5 years out. They call it going dark or dark tenant. So that's the great thing about it. It's as guaranteed of cash flow that you could possibly get in the real estate world. Now, that's a corporate guarantee. Someone like Burger King, you can get a corporate guarantee, but it's not likely because they're based so much on franchisees to continue to run their operation. But you could have a franchisee that has over 200 locations. Same thing. In order for that franchisee to go out to stop paying you, all of his locations would have to close. So that's why it's attractive to an investor, and that's why you will have an opportunity to make money on putting these deals together. So how do you make the money? All right. Again, as I mentioned, you have it under contract for $500,000. You get a national retailer, a national tenant, to commit to a long-term triple net lease, and that raises the value to $800,000. That's a $300,000 difference. Now, to make this a no-brainer and to move this quickly, yeah, it would be nice if you would capitalize on the entire $300,000, and if you had the patience and the time, you probably could. But in order to move it quickly, you make it a no-brainer for the investor. Instead of making the $300,000, you may just put it out there where you can make $75,000 instead of the $300,000, or you can make $100,000. It's still a great deal for them. So you see where the opportunity is there. This is really the same thing that you would do with wholesaling a house. Find it cheap. With the wholesaling house, you don't do anything. The deal is made by the price. But with a real estate, commercial single tenant net lease opportunity, you don't find the deal, you make the deal. You can pay full price that the owner is asking, but taking an additional step, which is the most difficult part of it. But these national retailers and national tenants are receptive to dealing with you, but it's all about timing. But their entire existence is to expand, because that means more revenue, more profit, more dividends for their shareholders if they're publicly traded. So their entire existence is to add more locations. It's about you doing the work to make sure that you're contacting enough national tenants. You may call the first one and say, hey, we want it, but you may be 100 in before you call. So I don't want to give you any misperceptions, but is it worth you doing that and making 75, 100K on a deal? Ask yourself. And some people may be making that right now, but even if you are, an additional 75, 100K to your income, what does that do for you financially? And especially if you've never made that money, that's easy to answer. So this is it. FlipThisBuilding.com will give you an opportunity to get more in detailed and in depth in this exact process and learn how to flip commercial buildings like houses, where your cash or credit won't matter. So let's go back through this again, just for the sake of understanding the entire process. First, you locate the building. You analyze the building, demographics, size of the building, traffic count, triple net comps in the area. You negotiate Don't worry about the earnest money if you go through my system. Now, I'm giving you the nuts and bolts, so you don't need me. You can figure out the rest if you're that if resourceful and just want to do the research. But you have your due diligence period, which is normally 45 days. That's where you're going to make your money. You add value by getting a national retailer, a national tenant to commit to a long-term triple net lease. That adds value, which increases the cap rate, makes the cap rate attractive. You go from having a building under contract for $500,000. As I said, you add value by getting a commitment from a national retailer. That increases the value to $800,000. There's a $300,000 difference that you can play with. You want to know more about this? FlipThisBuilding.com. You want to get started with a coach step-by-step course? I do offer that at FlipThisBuilding.com. Now, you may be on the other side of this, and you may want to actually own some of these buildings yourself. I'm going to go through this really quickly. This is for individuals that want to own these opportunities, because this is one of the things that I do. I offer these opportunities where the tenant is already there. Not the process I just explained, but the tenant is already there. So this is for probably existing landlords on the residential side of the building. So this is not a trick question, but would you rather rent from this group or lease to this group? As I explained earlier in the video, this money can be guaranteed for 10, 15, sometimes even 20 years. Whereas here, you're renewing every 6 months to a year. Dealing with just regular people, Joe the renter, you may have multiple tenants, whether you have multiple houses or apartment building and multiple tenants. You pay the taxes, you pay the insurance, you pay for maintenance, you have to handle evictions. But if you're dealing with a national tenant, you have one tenant, the tenant pays the taxes, the tenant pays insurance, tenant pays for maintenance, no evictions, long-term leases, corporate guarantee. Company has to go totally out of business for you not to get paid for the term of the lease. On top of that, then you have a rental increase as far as escalation every 3 to 5 years. That increases the value of the property, whereas your debt goes down, but the value of your property goes up. How good is that? If this is the best form of cash flow. There's no question about that. So if you want to know more about that, just go to triplenetcashflow.com. That's triplenetcashflow.com. Thanks, and I'll see you on the other side.